Oh, hi. So, I've been having this is not as comfortable as I'd hoped, a desire to be chatty or whatever, and having a hard time moving along in my Leipzig game, which, whatever. I was hoping to get it done in another week, but I think it's going to take longer than that even, and probably require more breaks in it. So I figured I'd talk about something that had been boiling around in my head for a while, and then my brother posted a comment over on the particular game that I'm playing. This is an online MMORPG that I'm playing. About how he couldn't really get into it. And maybe he only posted because, I don't know, whatever. Maybe because he seemed to be aware that I was playing it somehow. Maybe we're Steam friends, I don't know. Or maybe he listened to one of my videos in which I mentioned it. I don't recall. Or I don't think I have that information. But anyhow, what's up with that? What I was considering talking about was MMORPGs in general, and why I just don't really like them. But on the other hand, I've played a few. First of all, a fair amount of the time, my desire for playing a computer game of some sort is this, gee, I'm just looking for something to kill some time with, right? I'm not looking for a big investment. And when I play the games that I really, really like, they end up being a big investment. With the MMORPGs, horrible. With these kind of games, that's just about as long, isn't it? Can we just call them marbles? I don't know. What ends up happening, well, it depends on the type of game. There are certain games that I play that are multiplayer, but aren't very RPG-like. And most of them I don't want to go into too much discussion about, but fairly simple mechanisms, sometimes card-based games, sometimes fighting-based games and whatever, where I don't really mind the multiplayer aspect at all. That's sort of the whole game to me, is what, not necessarily the multiplayer aspect, but being able to do this stupid repetitive thing in the game and then do this stupid repetitive thing in competition with other people to some extent. And those are fine, except that they do end up hooking me, and I end up playing them, at first a lot, because they usually give you a lot of free, a lot of capability to play early on, but then they kind of draw you in like Wordle. It's like, well, I'm playing for a half hour every day for every day in my life, because if you miss a day, you get a, you don't get as much bonus as you do otherwise. You feel like you've got a duty to play it. And those are really, really hard to break my attention from. But I'm more interested, as I said, in the MMORPGs right now, because that's what I chose to play. While I'm playing something like Leipzig, or if I'm having trouble motivating to do something that's, anything really, the pain in my soul or whatever requires that I do something with all my time to drown my attentions. And a lot of that time is just spent watching, like news clips on YouTube or whatever. And there's so much cable news and so many clips that get posted to YouTube that, this could fill all my time. And recently I've been watching like old Addams Family reruns that are. There's not that many that are on, but there were a bunch that I hadn't seen, or at least like a handful that I hadn't seen before recently, and I may have seen them when I was a kid, but that I went into kind of a kick on that. And sometimes I'll watch somebody's channel or something, all as a time waster type of thing, and that's really kind of what drives me into playing any video game. Like, I'm not the kind of person who says, oh my God, I'm so excited this video game's coming out. One exception to that was The Witcher, but that's that whole series. But some of the reasoning behind that is probably because my past wife got into it as well, and that kind of raised it to another level. Like, I picked up Witcher 2 and was playing with it around the time we met, I think. Like, met in person. Whatever that, just such a weird situation there. But yeah, I mean, that helped solidify it as something that, I had a shared interest with someone. So that made it more exciting for me. But in a lot of cases, I'll just kind of stumble into, I wish I could play a video game. Now, once upon a time, I would just, grab things from abandonware sites or whatever. Now GOG is kind of replaced that for me to a large extent, and it actually helps me avoid my, there's often games for right around $1, they come into my feed. I'm like, each time I buy one of those, I have to make like 10 transactions a month, or I get charged $3 by my bank. My credit union, actually. I have a bank too, but and that $3 a month is worth it anyway, just because of the interest rates that they give, and other benefits that they give at the end of the year, where they give you a flood of money. So there's sort of this incentive for me to buy games, especially older games that, are not well desired. But then I end up, every now and then finding one for $5 or $10, and I'm like, oh, that looks really interesting, and I put it in and I buy it, and I buy, just like with the board games, probably even worse, I buy more than I possibly want. And plus they also give you freebies and stuff like that too. So anyway, I have like, an online collection of games that I don't get to very often, but if I want to go find a game on there, I can usually pick something out that looks kind of interesting, although I kind of feel like I'm dredging the bottom of the barrel, because buying these cheap games, well, they're either really, really old school, in which case they might be fun and they might capture my attention, but they might also just end up too annoying, not enough flavor to them, etc. Now, when I play video games, it's for different reasons. So, like, I'm kind of into builder type games where you're trying to build up a colony or a town or whatever, and maybe you have certain challenges there. Think SimCity-like, really, type of games, but often with more problems coming your way than SimCity does with its disasters. Like, SimCity's disasters and problems and whatnot are at a different level. So I'm thinking ones that give you missions and such. I kind of like the Railroad Tycoon stuff, things like that. Some of me used to really love the Paradox, the EU and Victoria, and I'm trying to remember anyway. Any except the World War II one, which I really fucking hated. It was just too much of the fighting aspect of it. But all of these will draw me in, and play a lot. For the role-playing games, I'm usually most into the storyline. I don't really care how challenging the game is. I want it to give me a little bit of a challenge. I don't want it to be a visual novel. I don't want it to be, oh, I can kill everything without ever having, to break a sweat. But I'm a lousy gamer, so, I'm the kind of person get good applies to, right? But, there's interesting games out there, and that's why The Witcher is particularly good. But there's interesting games out there that allow you to configure it on the easy level. Usually I play easy or moderate, it depends. So like Witcher, I was playing on moderate. I try to aim for that. But anyway, one of the things that was appealing about these MMORPGs is that you're able, these come with a storyline to them. They're often free to play, and I've done a few in the past. Most of them are very weak on the story, though. I remember Conan was kind of interesting. The one I'm playing right now has probably the richest story of any of them, which is Star Wars Old Republic. And what's really kind of interesting about it is it's not just one storyline. Like, most of the ones that I've played have one or two storylines that they work with. So for Conan, it was like one storyline, I think, throughout the entire game. And I played that for a while for the storyline. But I also played other ones where it's sort of a good versus evil type thing, which this one is as well. But your missions were based entirely, did you choose good or did you choose evil, or did you choose this side or that side? And there's a lot of sort of places where you can slip into PvP mode, player versus player, very, where it's just kind of happening. And people might be kind of lingering around to screw up lower level characters and stuff like that, or to help them, whatever. And you kind of had to cope with that to some extent or another. At least I felt that way. But with this one, I feel like I'm playing something where, yes, other players are interfering and fucking around in the same area that I'm in. Sometimes that means that I can't do my mission without standing there tapping my foot for a while. And yeah, that's kind of annoying, but whatever. What I don't feel any real requirement for at all is to do anything in that player versus player side. Now, this one has a level cap, and most of the ones that I played, I wouldn't have gone for this one, in fact, by my normal criteria, because most of the ones I played didn't have any kind of cost unless you wanted to be, a really good player. Like, if you wanted to buy the best equipment and get all kind of stuff, the idea of a level cap feels like, oh, the game's not going to all be available to me. But I wanted to give it a shot. I don't remember why. I saw something. You know why? It showed up in Steam. That's why. That's what convinced me to give it a shot. And it's got some annoying aspects in terms of having to log in separately and everything. It doesn't just throw you over in there. It's not as good as, a pure computer RPG. I was wondering if the UPS guy is coming to my house. It's not as good as a pure RPG in terms of the better ones for the storyline, but it's kind of equivalent to a not that good RPG, which, not a great one, but not a bad one either. And more than that, there's, I think, 8 different character classes, each of which has its own fairly long storyline that you can play out. That's, each one of them has as rich a storyline as that fairly good RPG does, right? And at the end, once you reach through the end of that storyline, you feel like you've completed a complete video game. And then you can still fuck around and do some stuff with that character that you're not, classed out of, that you're not leveled out of or whatever. I presume that there's stuff that gets harder to do that, that shows up that's really tough to do. And there's certainly equipment and such not that you just can't get without the subscription price. Subscription price it seemed ridiculously high to me. Again, I'm somebody who pretty much caps at like $10 for any video game I'm gonna buy. And, I see, although I did buy a whole bunch of EU stuff, I think for EU4, for like, it was this weird deal, humble bundle or something like that. They got you a whole bunch of older stuff that's just, but at a reasonable price for the whole pile. And I'm like, yeah, I'll probably play EU again, sure. But, when you're looking at how much I can get out of it for free versus it's like $30 a month to play this thing. And, I can't imagine that they'd be putting that much more story in that's inaccessible to me. So I find it kind of odd, because if what I want is the player versus player type stuff and the competition and the fighting and all, there are cheaper alternatives to this, I'm sure. I don't know, I'm not sure, but I think, right? Whereas if it's EA, so I'm assuming, if what I'm looking for is that storyline stuff, which I am, it just seems completely ridiculous to put, that kind of money in, period, I don't know. Anyway, these were just thoughts that I felt like I wanted to say something about these, because I've been doing a lot of it for the past few weeks, and it's kind of odd. It's been a long time since I've done one of these more in-depth ones where you really have to like play it like a regular role-playing game, but it could go on forever. However, I got through one character, and after I got through the storyline, I'm like, well, I want to try another one, and I'll probably do at least one more. And it's a pretty good payoff for, no money. Certainly better than some of the older RPGs that I would deal with for the graphics and whatnot, especially. But the story's not bad. And it's not like you get to make a lot of moral choices, but they don't really affect too much. They affect like what you're told you did at the end of each little piece of the story. And they can change how much dark or light influence you have on you, which affects you in the game a little bit, but it doesn't really affect how people see you particularly, which I find kind of strange. Like, again, I'm used to things like The Witcher, where you're making these really, really important decisions, and the whole path of the game changes because of them. As kind of, that's where I like things to be. This feels more like, the bland kind of thing where, yeah, it may impact you briefly, but it just doesn't feel like that big of a thing. Anyway, I know this is a boring ass one, but like I said, I felt like chattering about something, and this is what's on my mind. There was something else I might have chattered about. I don't remember what it was. Probably already have. I'm such a broken record. Cheers.